everyone, and welcome back to Advancing Your Business, Your People, and Your Legacy conversation series. My name is Champ Rawls. I'm the Director of Development with the Rawls Group, your host. The last year has forced us all to think differently. We're all forced to operate different from our norm, which results in changing perspectives. Employee and customer mindsets have changed, which means it is essential for leaders and owners to also think differently. In this episode of the Innovative Recruiting and Retention Strategies to Land Top Talent series, Suzanne Malo, Director of DHG Search, and Champ Rawls, a succession planner with the Rawls Group, discusses key learnings you should apply to your business moving forward as a result of the pandemic. Here we go. Suzanne, what are the top things the pandemic has taught us as it relates to recruiting and retaining key talent?
Well, I think we have to think differently, first of all. The world changed and employees' mindsets changed, and we've really learned to live in a virtual world. So number one is we got to think about everything differently. Number two, I think people are looking for remote work or hybrid remote/on-site type positions. Because we've learned to live in a virtual world, and so many people have literally been working through Zoom or a hybrid of Zoom and on-site for the last 15 months. I believe that people like that and are looking to do it more. Now, some positions within a dealership, it's really impossible for them to have a complete remote or complete hybrid type environment, but I would venture to say that kind of the bell-to-bell schedule is out. If you just look at the way our customers are buying, more customers are buying online than ever before. And so do you need to have your showroom packed with employees, or can you utilize some of your employees in like a BDC type environment that are, not necessarily in your showroom? And I guess the other thing that we've learned is that interviews can take place over Zoom very easily. I remember in April of last year, I had interviews that were supposed to be face-to-face scheduled, and it was going to be impossible for people to get on planes and, fly across the country to have these meetings. And we set these interviews up over Zoom. And I remember thinking to myself, this is going to be a disaster. How is this ever going to work? And I'm sure my clients were feeling the same way, but we were forced into it. And we realized that we really can get to know somebody through a computer screen, crazy as it is. I do think that it doesn't replace it completely. And ultimately, you do need to meet these people face to face. But I think that initial interviews and even into second and third talks can be done virtually.
I would add too, I think, Suzanne, your point about different positions will require different responsibilities. Obviously your top management, I think it has changed, like you're saying, of needing to be there 8 to 9 p.m. And being flexible. And I think that's the biggest word that I've learned 2020. And that I think most people have, especially in recruiting and retaining key talent, is if you're not flexible with your talent, they'll find somewhere else to go, because people are desperate right now for employees and top talent. And I think people are willing to pay a lot of money as well. So I think the first thing when we're talking here is, what do you have to do to retain? And that goes back to, again, what's your culture? What's your pay plan? And how creative are you in being flexible to meeting the needs of your people? And once you have been able to retain your base, then I think the next question is going out and, okay, the needs that you have, how do you recruit? Who do you recruit with? And what are the recruiting failures that I've seen during the pandemic? And I think it's kind of just the cracks have been more exposed, is the people who are doing the recruiting don't have a consistent process that they follow. And I think that is so important with this, that it's when you get a resume, you do this and you decline them, and and I always go back to, okay, well, what was your process? And they go, I don't know, I just didn't like that person. That is, to me, a losing process, because There's not a check, and you can't compare it.
Right. And we tell our clients, you've got to stick with us through a process, and dealers are very, I love dealers. They're entrepreneurial. They think quickly. They act with gut instinct, which is all great. But when it comes to recruiting, that's probably not the best means to make, hiring decisions is quickly and with your gut. It kind of goes to what you're saying, Champ. If you have a process that you lay out at the beginning when you have a position to fill, and this is what I'm going to do first, second, third, this is how I'm going to communicate with the candidate. I'm going to, if a person comes in here that I really like, I'm going to court them. As silly as that might sound, this is a courtship. You are recruiting them. You are trying to entice them to come work for you. And as we've said in another episode before, playing hard to get probably isn't the greatest recruiting strategy.
I also think, and Suzanne, this is your expertise too, but I've been running into this as well, the professional candidate. And I think, to me, and when I say professional candidate, that to me means that person that you are recruiting that is the professional interviewee. They say all the right things. They're so positive. They got the great resume. They're like they got stars around them. And in the automobile industry, like, we're saying, it's a lot about sales. So they're also known as the perfect salesman of themselves. And for me, I always tell my clients who are in the recruiting process or interview process, if you don't have a process that you consistently follow, that you ask the same questions, you do the same things, you're going to get enamored by the bright, shiny object that oftentimes comes into your organization. And then 3 months later, you're going, that's not the person I thought I hired, because they're a professional interviewee.
Right. They're car salesmen.
Yes. And that's where I just can't emphasize enough, I think, the process to be able to compare apples to apples, not go, I just looked at some apples and then that's a really bright, shiny word. And then I do think, Suzanne, I have seen a lot of, over the last year and even coming up, alternative work arrangements. Mm-hmm. Where, and really, again, I think this is probably so much not for your run-of-the-mill salesmen and all that kind of stuff, but I think with the working from home and working remote, and it really goes back into what we were talking about at the beginning, retaining key talent is answering key manager requests to saying, listen, I was burnt out last year. I need a week working from where I need to work. I will get it done. We will have a system. We will have a calendar. And having seen my dealers agree to that has been pretty amazing. Coming from, 15 to 2019, there was no talk of that.
Right. Well, and I also think that companies are a little bit more open to the idea. I'll give you an example. I have a client that has found the right candidate, but his son is going to be a senior in high school and they don't want to move immediately. And the client has decided that the individual can live where his son is going to go to high school and, basically be remote, where they're going to, kind of come back come on site, maybe it's a couple times a month. So there's going to be some travel involved, but it will keep the family from having to uproot while the child finishes his last year of high school, and then they will relocate. And I think you only do that if you have found the perfect candidate, right, and the timing doesn't work exactly how it should or exactly how you want to. It is possible to think creatively and think differently about the way that you could make it work. And I have a couple of hybrid remote type positions right now that I'm working on. It's the first time I've ever dealt with this, where the company actually doesn't care where this person lives. They don't. And it opens it up completely. Now, yeah. I think that's a very unique position and a very unique situation.
Yes.
Not everybody can do that, but it just goes back to thinking creatively. Can you do that? If you think it's possible, then maybe you should talk about that as a recruiting strategy, offering that as an option.
Well, and I remember I had to, just to make one more point there, tell one of my dealers when one of their key executives brought this to them, that they wanted to work remote for over a week a month, that if you have multiple rooftops, the reality that your key executives are going to be in every car dealership that you own every month or every week doesn't happen anyway. So the concept of this has been occurring before 2020. We just were thought of it into a different way. And if you can take your mind into thinking about it that way, I think it is not so far-fetched to go, this is possible. And like you said, the expectation is there's a structure. You will be, there's travel. You're going to be in the management company office or the dealerships. But I think it goes back to what we're saying. Recruiting and retaining has never been harder. And if you're not flexible and creative enough to do these sort of things, somebody else will be.
A key learning I took out of this episode is the power of flexibility. You may or may not have heard the saying, the most flexible person controls the system. This can also be applied to recruitment, retention, and motivation strategies. The more options your people have to balance work and life and grow and develop, the more valued they will feel, which will ultimately reflect in your high performance culture. The recruitment and retention of top talent is essential to building business value, sustaining business performance, implementing strategic plans, and consequently, your succession goals. The next episode of this series focuses on recommendations for recruiting top talent. Do you have a question you want to discuss with an expert? Feel free to reach out directly to Suzanne or Champ at the email addresses listed on the screen. Continue listening to the series now or come back later for more. Each topic featured may want you to learn something new.